Welcome to the Gorgeous Gray podcast. I am Nicole Scott, your host, registered holistic nutritionist, rest mindset coach, author of the Gorgeous Gray movement, and the co-creator of the Menopause Reset program. In this podcast, we have real conversations about aging as a woman and all the pressure and uncertainty we feel as we head into menopause and beyond. Let's face it, aging is not an easy conversation to have, but I say it's time to talk about the messy middle and offer hope when we feel like giving up on ourselves. Let's talk about our fears around gray hair, our muffin tops, and even our dry, itchy vaginas and everything in between. I will help you reconnect to your feminine energy and offer real solutions from experts in their field to navigate aging as a woman. I believe we, as women, deserve to shine even brighter in this next chapter of life. So with a sense of humor and a lot of compassion, let's dive into these vulnerable conversations. Hello, gorgeous gray women out there. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of these juicy conversations about aging. We have such a special guest here today with us, Sheela Zelmer. She is a physiotherapist that specializes in pelvic floor health. I want you to follow her on social because I think you will love her content and what she stands for. So not only is she a pelvic floor specialist, intimacy coach, we might go there today, and then really having that conversation anywhere from puberty all the way up to menopause. So I really want to dive into this conversation about pelvic floor health because I know I'm having my own struggles. And so this is actually our first conversation on my podcast about pelvic floor. So Sheela, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I think the first time I connected with you was through Jen Pike and through one of her podcasts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's in my backyard. And do you think I've done anything about it? No.
Yeah.
And I know I need help. So here I am as a woman. I'm going to be 53 this year. I now get up at night probably 2 to 3 times to go to the bathroom. And
Okay.
it probably started in perimenopause, where it was once. And now as I get older, it's 2 to 3 times. I'm like, is it going to be like on the hour? So I know I need help. But before we even dive into that conversation, let's just talk a little bit about what you do and
Mhm.
why do you do it?
All right. So I am a physiotherapist. That's my training, but I have a special interest in pelvic health. And so the pelvic floor is a group of muscles that runs from the pubic bone in the front all the way to the tailbone in the back. And so this area has been so neglected. We don't really think about it. These muscles are kind of doing their job our whole lives. And it's only when we start to have a problem like what you're saying that we say, hey, is this something I have to live with? And the reality is, no, we don't. So I got into this probably, I'm going to say a good 10 years ago after doing the standard physio, shoulders and knees and feet and things like that, but recognize that this is a unique area and the need is so great for sure. Yeah.
That's so awesome. So, well, let's talk about a woman that is heading into her late perimenopause to menopause, and some shifts start to happen down there, right? Maybe they're
Yeah.
having painful sex, maybe they don't want to have sex because things are just not, but they don't know what to do or even where to turn. So,
Yeah.
that's probably one of your typical clients, right? They come in,
100%.
okay, so let's talk about that client. Where do you even begin? And what
Well,
kind of treatment too? Like, I'm like,
okay.
as
Yeah.
a
What that
woman, I'm
looks
like,
like.
okay, I'm laying
Yes.
there, my legs are spread open. What the hell does she
Okay.
do? What does
Okay.
she,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Well, so the thing is that the pelvic floor, so this group of muscles, it really has 5 big jobs. So it gives us bladder and bowel control because we can think of that like you were just mentioning that part. It has a sexual function, right? It has a support function. It kind of acts like a bra to kind of lift everything up and give that structural support. It acts like a sump pump, so it helps us with circulation in our legs and our pelvis. It also has a stability function, so it's working with the rest of our core to help us feel strong, to be able to move. And so whenever we have problems in any of these areas. So maybe back pain, maybe we're having hip pain, maybe we're having frequent going to the bathroom, or maybe we're having challenges with intimacy. Any of these things can be related to issues with the pelvic floor. And so usually someone is coming to me often because there's a problem, and we're hoping to change that, right? We're wanting people to sort of be proactive about their health, recognizing that like any other part of our body, we can have preventative care and maintain good health in these areas. Yeah. So what does it look like if someone comes to see me for an assessment? Okay. So, for sure, we're going to go through a full history. We want to understand your medical history. We want to understand your gynecological history. Have you had children? Have you not had children? Like, these conditions are not unique to women who have only had children. So we think that, oh, well, I never had kids. Why am I having issues in this area? That's not true, because these muscles in this area is very hormone rich. And when we go through the natural hormonal changes that occurs with, say, pregnancy, and then perimenopause to menopause and then beyond, we can't help but experience some issues in this area if things are not balanced well, if things aren't working well. So that's often when women come to see me. So that perimenopause, menopause. And so we ask a lot of questions. I want to know all of those things. We're going to ask you questions about how often you go pee, how often you poop, what's your poop like, what are your periods like, or what were they like, what is sex like, are you having any pain, is there any dryness, can you orgasm, do you have great sensation, is it less, what's your libido like all of these things are all interrelated. And so based on that, we're going to do an examination. And yes, these muscles are inside the vagina and rectum, and so the exam usually would be recommended to have an internal vaginal or even a rectal examination, depending on what we're talking about. And so it's not like a gynae exam, like your feet aren't in stirrups, there's no headlamp or anything like that. I sit what I call like European style. I sit at the side of the bed, so, and it's very respectful. It's very informative. Like, the whole point is for women to understand what's happening in their body, to get rid of some of this mystery. A lot of times we talk about it down there. We don't even know what we're feeling, what's going on. And so there really is a lot of discovery that's involved in the assessment, for sure.
I love that. Oh my gosh, this is such a missing piece, I think, in
Yeah.
so many women's lives, that they've never been to, get the checkup and the whole bit. So I am so excited. I am totally booking a session. I've never had one myself, other than your physical or your annual checkup. And this is me after having two big, gigantic babies.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to tell a story, and then you can comment, because there might be some women in here that will relate to the story. So after my second, she was 10 pounds. 5 days later, after having a 10-pound baby, I was walking with my toddler through the Toronto Zoo with my mom and my dad. And about 2 hours after walking and probably running after my toddler, I went, "Mom, something's not right down below." Didn't even, say the
Yeah.
word vagina. I was like,
Yeah.
something's not right. I feel like something's literally hanging out of my vagina. Went to the bathroom, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you need to call your midwife." I had had a prolapsed uterus, and my uterus literally was trying to get out of my vagina. And as a young 30-year-old, like I would have been 32 years old,
Yeah.
I was crying. I was like, "Oh my God, my vagina's broken." Like, I was so sad. And I was bedridden for almost 3 months, like just
Mhm.
light stuff, and the
Interesting.
Kegels and stuff. But let's comment about that. When a woman, has a prolapsed uterus in her younger years, what should I have done back then? Because I
Yeah.
obviously did not get any treatment around that, other than a little direction from my midwife. Now, understanding at 53, it's like, what could I have done differently?
Yeah. So, that is like such a huge topic to unpack. So, I mean, first of all, I feel very excited because of things like social media and podcasts, younger women are understanding that there is a role for pelvic physio even in pregnancy. So women are doing the prehab. They are preparing for labor, preparing for delivery, and then setting up a postpartum plan of care. So usually we make recommendations, around not running after your toddler. You know what I mean? Like there's some of these things but we don't know. But it's again, educating, providing that guidance and reassurance, just so that women are supported in that first initial, I'm going to say 12 weeks after you have a baby. It's hard. This is the reality. You've got a toddler, maybe multiple kids. You still got to do the groceries and the housework and take out the dog and all of these sorts of things. How do you recuperate and recover, right? So we go through that. What does that look like? How to perform a pelvic floor lift correctly, how to do some of these activities correctly. So we go through all of that so that postpartum period is a little bit more supported and more empowered, so women don't feel afraid of doing things. And so your experience of having several months of being in bed, like we definitely wouldn't do that anymore. There would be a lot of rehab. How do we get everything up? How do we encourage your tissues to lift? Because they are naturally recoiling and tightening back up after we have a baby. We just need to support that in the right way. So that's really what that would look like. We look at things like, is there any abdominal separation? Is there any scar tissue? All of those things get bundled up there because women who struggle with that in their 30s. And so what you described is very common. Women will text me after they had their baby. I see something when I wipe, or I feel something when I wipe. But those women become 50, 60 plus women that have prolapse, right? Things are loose, right? So how do we, and that is, it's a whole other topic, because women who experience prolapse are less likely to be active, right? Like if we are worried that something's going to fall out, we're not going to do the high impact aerobics. We're not going to go for the big long hikes. We're going to tone down our physical activity. And that has implications for our heart health, our bone health, our brain health. Like it's far reaching beyond just the pelvis. That's the same thing with leakage. Women who dismiss the leakage tend not to work out as intensely because they don't want to smell like pee. I get it, right? Nobody wants to do that. But if we don't address those things, then we shortchange our health down the line.
Yeah, I remember when my sister had twins about 10 years ago. So I'm so grateful that this conversation was starting to happen because she had that awareness. And she had the abs split. And so she had to go to an expert. I never even knew there was such a thing, that there was an expert exercise, to support that. And all the exercise she was doing it all wrong. And then this expert, she had their own clinic in Calgary. I was so impressed. I was like, oh my God, my mind is blown away. Where was this like 20 years ago for me,
Exactly,
right?
right? Yeah.
So, but she did all the stuff that she could to prevent surgery, but in the long run, she ended up getting the mesh and having everything lifted because she's a runner and she couldn't run without literally a diaper on. And it was so embarrassing. So she did get this surgery about 5 years ago. And so far, so good. It did turn out. Remember her being so nervous about having a major surgery, but it has allowed her to have a more active life. Any thoughts or comments on that?
So I think that's really important because sometimes women can feel like they failed if they have to, like whether we're talking about intimacy and requiring hormones, or whether we're talking about bladder control and they need surgery. Some women will feel like they failed if exercises and lifestyle don't address it. But that's not true. We want like a full life in all those capacities. So I don't think you can jump ahead and someone who only does surgery and doesn't do the rest of the fitness aspect of it and the optimization of the muscles is not going to have great results. Same thing with the intimacy aspect. You can't just take hormones and not address some of the other aspects of intimacy and hope to have a great sex life. It all is working holistically, right?
Right. I love that. Let's talk Kegels. I know
Okay.
that's like one of the words that I learned 20 years ago
Yes.
when I had this prolapse. My midwife said, okay, you have to start doing these Kegels,
Yes.
Kegels. And she made me put a little sticky note with a K on it in my car. So every time I drove and I was at a stoplight, she made me do these Kegels.
Right.
That was kind of like all the training that I
Yes.
got 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Can we talk about like what a woman can do? You're at home, you've got some leakage in that. What are some of the exercise? And is it good for all women, or can it also be
Mm.
harmful for some women that,
Yes.
maybe you don't need to do Kegels,
Yeah.
but you're doing it and you might injure yourself. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So interestingly, the term Kegel, like it was named after a man. And so the term is kind of going out of favor, if you will. And we're calling them pelvic floor exercises, right?
Okay.
As opposed to named after this person. He was just the doctor who developed it, right? But really, we're talking about using these muscles, not just to squeeze. So please do not squeeze and hold pee on the toilet. Like some people, like they try to stop the flow of urine. That is not correct. That is just pinching the stream. That is not a proper exercise. Remember, I mentioned these muscles act almost like a support, right? We need a lifting. So the idea of practicing to lift a blueberry inside the vagina, to pull up in the rectum, like that kind of visual in our mind is really helpful. You can take a mirror and look. So if you were to look with a mirror, you should be able to see your vagina coming inward when you do the exercise correctly. Now, if we back up even more, not everybody needs to do Kegels, because this, was the only exercise we thought of. And the reality is the majority of us don't necessarily have weakness because the muscles are too loosey-goosey, right? When we think about weakness, we can also have weakness in our muscles when things are too tight. So imagine my neck and shoulders. If my shoulders are up like this muscle is not like flexible, it's very tight. But if I go to the gym and start doing overhead presses, I'm going to get so tired because the muscle is so like clenched up together. And the research says like over 87% of us have tension in the pelvic floor, right? So if you've got things like back pain, if you struggle with constipation, frequently going to pee, like what you're just describing there, Nicole, any kind of urgency where, you stand up and suddenly you feel like you've got to go, or when you arrive home and you open the door, you suddenly have to rush to the bathroom. All of that is associated with increased tension, not weakness, right? So doing more squeezing doesn't help those scenarios. So for sure, try lifting the blueberry, try doing exercises like this, but apply exercise principles. So I appreciate that your midwife had the foresight to say you need to exercise this area. But we wouldn't strengthen muscles around our knee by just doing a few squats here and there. We would approach it like anything else. Load it with some weight, 3 sets of 10 or whatever it is, right? To really bulk up that muscle. And so we need to approach strengthening this muscle group the same way. So 30 reps, 3 sets of 10 is a great number, right? And if doing that doesn't change your symptoms, you need to get it assessed, because we can try it on our own, but it might be that you don't need to do them, or maybe you're not doing them properly, right? And so really understanding, but too many women think, oh, I'll just squeeze whenever I am in the car, or I'll squeeze while I'm watching TV. And yet they don't experience changes in what they're feeling, right?
Yeah, I wanted you to answer that because I have a friend that has just gone through some therapy, and she's like, here I was doing Kegels and my therapist said, no, don't do them. There's too
Yeah.
much tension. We got to almost like do the opposite, right? So she
Yes.
was like, oh, I thought every woman needed to do them. And that was kind of like my impression too. So
Sure.
that's really interesting. Now, how about these new chairs that are coming out where you can sit on it and get like 10,000 Kegels, in a session? I hear, I've seen them at the women's show,
Yeah.
and I've sat on one. I actually didn't think I sat on it properly, either did my friend, and we had such a funny experience as we were walking away from it. I'm like, I've got tingling in my leg, and then she's like, I got tingling in my ass, and I'm like, I don't think we were sitting on it properly. So your thoughts on
Yes.
that?
Well, so we have used, as physios, we have used electronic technologies to get people to connect with muscles
Okay.
for decades, right? So, if we think about Christopher Reeve way back when he had his like accident where he, with that injury with the horse, he had lots of muscle stim. So they were electrodes that were placed on different muscles to try to get him to reconnect, to stimulate these muscles. There is a role for something like the Emsella chair. That's that chair that you're talking about, to help you connect with them. But I really believe the notion that it's going to strengthen your muscles for you, it's kind of like trying to say, if I buy a Dr. Ho, am I going to have great abs? Like I don't think, the research says that's not the way it works. There is a value if you cannot figure out how to move those muscles at all. If no matter what you try, you work with someone, you still can't get it, well, then maybe doing the 3 sessions on one of those chairs is going to help you be able to connect. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, you've got to do those exercises. There are
Okay.
some other products that are out there, like there are like exercisers that are almost like a sensor that is Bluetooth to your phone. You
Okay.
know, there are things like weights and like those jade eggs that can be inserted to provide extra resistance. I love those. Those are great. They're tools no different than you would use dumbbells to do arm exercises, kettlebells or something like that. But thinking that I can buy this machine and just bypass all of the work, I think
Right.
just speaks more to the quick fix culture that we're in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. This is so good. Let's go into a conversation about orgasms for women because I
Mhm.
do get that. It's like
Yes.
as I'm getting older, it's getting harder for me to get to that place of
Yep.
stimulation. So, what 5 minutes used to take me with my vibrator now is taking me 30 minutes, which is taking me 45 minutes. And because it's taking me so long, I don't have the time. I'm getting impatient.
Yep.
So how do we address that as a woman? Because I know it can be very frustrating and almost like
For
a woman
sure.
will give up and say, this is taking way too long.
No, for sure. So if we step back a little bit, I think it's really important to make sure that your libido is there, right? Like that your desire is there. So, women who in a partnered relationship are not able to orgasm, I want to know if they're turned on, if they are interested in that intimacy, or are they doing it for their partner's sake? Are they just going through the motion? Because the ability to orgasm and our libido is mental as well as physical. And so if we don't have that mental piece, if we're not really there, our body is not going to respond. Because again, this area is very rich in hormones. When we experience that decline that is natural, we are going to have some changes that occur there. Now, just like we get tired more easily, or maybe our joints respond in a different way to things that they did, say, 20 years ago. It's recognizing that this is your changing body, and that's okay. But you want to have good, strong muscles. So for sure, making sure that your muscles are optimized. Too loose, like too weak, they're not going to be able to hold that stimulation and arousal, but also too tight. They're not going to be able to let go and experience that pleasure. But the other piece is the hormones, right? If your hormones are not where they should be, and there are local hormones, whether they are bioidentical, prescribed by a family doctor or a gynecologist, that really will bulk that area up. Like when we get a natural thinning and an atrophy in that area, the clitoris can actually shrink, right? Like, and that's a normal hormonal change. But if being sexually active is something that you are missing, it is definitely part of looking into, is that hormonal piece something that I have to attend to in order to optimize that, and then address the other physical components like the muscle, but also moisturizer. So I don't know if you talk to your listeners about vaginal moisturizers. I'm a big fan. We use skincare on our face. We should be using a vaginal moisturizer, a hyaluronic acid based vaginal moisturizer, to really provide bulk and suppleness, because unfortunately we lose that, right? And
Yeah.
once you've lost it, you can't reverse it, unfortunately.
Right. No, we talk about it a lot on
Yeah,
some
it's
of our
great.
podcasts for sure, which is great. A favorite brand, what do you recommend to your clients when they come in? Because that's the overwhelm too, right? You want something that's clean and
For
non-toxic.
sure. Yeah. So there are three that I recommend, and they vary in price point and also access, right?
Okay.
So, I'm in Canada. So the one of the ones that I recommend is Gynatrof, which you can buy at the drugstore. Repagyne is also available at the drugstore. Gynatrof is a gel, Repagyne is a suppository, and Feel Amazing is made in BC, and it's also a gel, and that is something that you can get online. So,
Oh, I
yeah.
wonder I was just connecting with Andrea Donsky yesterday, and she had mentioned something about BC. So wonder if it's
Okay.
the same
Yeah,
clean
probably.
ingredients
Yep.
that she approves. So we're
Yes.
like, oh, we got to check that one out. And they ship across, is it Canada and
Even the
US?
US. Yeah, they
Oh,
ship
good.
across the US too. And it's a higher price point. It's a better quality product,
Yeah.
but it's a higher price point. And so I really respect that women are coming from all different economic backgrounds. So all three of those products have minimal ingredients, and
Okay.
are pretty clean and very transparent about what's on them. So hyaluronic acid, vitamin E, shea butter, those sorts of things, without a lot of extra stuff. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Have you heard of the Pleasure Pod?
No.
No, so when I was at the women's show last fall, there was a company out of Ontario that was there that was just releasing, and I think it just came out in December, called the Pleasure Pod, and it's got 5 ingredients, and it is in this like little, almost like egg shape, and
Oh,
it melts in your hand, and you can
yes.
put it down there and
Yep.
do your rubbing, and it's very clean, like you could eat it. It's so
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Well, and so that's interesting because these products that I'm talking about are to go inside the vagina.
Inside. Okay,
Oh,
perfect.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
like
we're
we want
talking
them
like plump it
inside
up.
that vaginal canal, right? Yeah,
Right.
because that's where we're sort of putting them. So whether it's the little suppository, it's like a little wax ovule that kind of goes in,
Okay.
or that gel, either of them, it goes inside. Now, some of it's going to come out, of course,
Yeah.
but it's meant to moisturize from the inside out. Yeah, not just
Okay.
externally. Oh, there's lots of wonderful products that are for external too, whether you want
Right.
to use that for partnered activities, solo activities, or just as moisturizer. Yeah,
That's so good. What do you think of coconut oil?
not a fan.
Tell me why.
So, coconut oil is not this right pH for a postmenopausal woman's vagina,
Okay.
even perimenopausal. We lose some of that acidity. We're more predisposed to things like BV, yeast, etc., because we are not producing that same estrogen there. And so then to put coconut oil that is a little bit not quite a good match, it does predispose some women to things like BV, etc.
Mm.
Now, I also think our body is very resilient most of the
Mhm.
time. So if you're
Mhm.
using it and you like it, then enjoy. I have some
Mhm.
women that use it as a lube and they're
Yeah.
not bothered by it, but
Okay.
some women are irritated by it, right? So I
Okay.
think you have to try.
Yeah.
Coconut oil is not a moisturizer, it's more of an occlusive, right? It's not
Yeah.
penetrating into the skin, which is what these hyaluronic acid is meant to do. It binds with 100 times its weight in water, right? So not just like a diaper cream that's sealing a barrier over tissue. We're actually plumping up the tissue by hydrating it more with some of these other
Right.
products. Yeah.
So when you do use these internal, are you usually putting them on at night before you go to bed and let
Yes.
the magic happen? Is that the perfect timing for them?
Yeah. And, so ideally, a woman, so just to give you a little bit of info on yourself there, Nicole. So, under the age of 50, we really hope that women won't be getting up to go pee at night. Like, that's what we consider normal
Right.
function, is that you
Yeah.
sleep through the night without having to pee.
Okay.
So, if you do use one of these products at night, you've got a nice long stretch where you're not wiping it away. Whereas if you put it in the morning and then you go pee an hour or so later, every time you wipe, you're going to be wiping it away.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
that is really good to know. And what are some lube creams that you love? So if coconut isn't your number one choice, what are some, other, I'm going to say natural, affordable products that you recommend to
Yeah.
your women?
So, so it's interesting when we talk about water-based lubes, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people think they are cleaner because of the word water. But if you look at the ingredient
Yeah.
list, they're very lengthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are some really great water-based. Silicone is another one. Like a woman who is experiencing a lot of dryness, maybe experiences some burning or stinging after
Mm,
intimacy, I definitely would recommend a silicone lubricant.
okay.
Something like Uber Lube only has 2 ingredients in it. Now it is silicone, but you use a tiny bit and you wipe it away. Is that better than several tablespoons of a water base that's going to sit on the skin? I don't know, right? Like there
Mm,
is so much trial and error in trying it. So Sliquid, S in front of the word liquid,
mhm.
makes wonderful water-based and silicone-based products as well as oil-based. So someone who has dryness might like an oil-based as well. Yes, YES makes an oil-based lubricant. That's great. There's even hybrid, like Yes makes a water and hybrid, like you kind of shake it. So there's a little
Okay.
bit of both in there. But definitely Uber Lubes, Liquid, and Yes would probably be my favorite ones.
Awesome. We'll make sure that we will summarize all that in the
Yeah,
show's
okay.
notes that our women can go and check it out with some websites and stuff like that. That is
Mhm.
incredible. So, if a woman is listening and they're like, I think I want to make an appointment, how do they go about finding the right practitioner? Obviously, you're in Ontario, you're here in Canada, we've got viewers all over the world. So what would it, first off, if they want to come to you and they're in the GTA area, they can. So,
Yes.
how do they get a hold of you?
So my website is SheelaZelmer.com. And so you can read a little bit about me. There's a link to book an appointment, or you can book a 15-minute discovery call. Maybe you've got questions. You want to understand how it's going to work. You can do that there. But if you're looking for a pelvic health physiotherapist, I'm going to say let's start in Canada. Pelvic Health Solutions so pelvichealthsolutions.ca is a third-party sort of teaching organization. It's a compendium of pelvic health physiotherapists across Canada. So you can search by city, and you can find someone that's in your area. You can look at their bios. You can see the training that they have. So that's really helpful. There are pelvic health physiotherapists that have a specialization in cancer. So maybe you're experiencing some changes related to cancer treatment. You can look at that. Or maybe it's related to menopause. You can look at that. So again, really interesting there. If you're in the United States, Pelvic Guru, GURU, is another registry that you can take a look at and find a pelvic health therapist in the US. Now, outside of that, I don't really know. So
Okay,
I can't,
well,
yeah.
that's perfect. That's a great start for our viewers. That's amazing. So is there any last message to a woman that's listening to this that is sitting on the fence about, investing in herself? Now, I guess for some it's insured and covered, right, under insurance as a
Yes.
physio.
Mm-hmm.
But for some people who don't have insurance and they're like, they want help, but
Yeah.
what's your message to that woman that's needing to take that next step and ask for help?
So, what I would say is that with all of the aspects of our health, when we're talking about optimizing our health, unfortunately, there's so much of us that we have to go beyond just our family doctors, right? We do have to sort of look at that. Even a single session is going to be valuable to understand, do I have too much tension in my pelvic floor, or is it a weak pelvic floor? What kind of exercises do I need? What kind of products would be best for me? Even something like that is really, really valuable. My real recommendation is that just like we go to the dentist for maintenance, we do see changes in our teeth if we're not staying on top of that, because we're not aware of all the intricacies around our gums and what's happening below the surface. Pelvic health really should be the same. And so I often will see women even once or twice a year as maintenance, just to sort of say, okay, where are we at? If you have a prolapse, for example, is it progressing? Are things worsening? If you have that abdominal separation, what's going on there? That also builds an accountability a little bit. If you know someone's going to be checking, it sort of helps you to say, okay, I've got that appointment coming up. I really should make sure that I'm staying with the things that I know are good for me.
I love it. Oh my gosh, you have inspired me so much. I am totally going to book an appointment. And you
Oh,
hear that, ladies.
amazing.
I am going to give you updates and keep you posted,
Amazing.
because it's so true. And I'll just tell my story about my gums. So about when I went into menopause. So I celebrated my 1 year last year, changes
Hey.
in my gum health, and things started to shift. I started to get more inflammation,
Yeah.
and I'm like, why wouldn't I have gotten my vagina checked out if that was happening in my mouth health? You just made me go, oh my gosh, I can't
Yeah.
believe I have been avoiding another body part that is so important, yet we so forget. So this
Yeah.
conversation today, Sheila, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I
Oh, that's
think
been
that
so
this is
great.
going to land so much for my women, that it will motivate them to go get checked. Even, Mother's Day is coming up, right? And then birthdays are coming up. So what, you can say, I don't want to go out for dinner, I don't want flowers, I want to get my vagina checked out, right?
Yes.
It's a better investment, ladies.
Yes.
I'm just saying. Thank you so much for tuning into this beautiful conversation, and until next time, and thank you again, Sheila.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to say thank you for listening to today's episode. If this message landed for you, make sure to leave a review and tag me, Nicole Scott, at Gorgeous Gray Movement, and make sure to share with your friends. You can head over to my free Facebook community, Gorgeous Gray Movement, or subscribe to my YouTube channel for more inspiring interviews. If you are still struggling and need additional support, you can take a look at my website, nicolescott.ca, and learn more about my new Menopause Reset program that I'm so excited for. Until next time, ladies, be well and own your sparkle.